So you got a rooster across the street that the listing agent says is going to be the death of her. And you got a little bit of a trailer situation. And then some undeveloped land. The listing agent says, yeah, that rooster is pretty consistent with its noise. So I think she wasn't kidding that that's kind of a problem. It's not that big of a deal, but it's, as far as roosters go, it's kind of a nuisance. So you've got this house next there. Apparently these guys take care of the lawn. Their exterior kind of condition, there's a lot of stuff in the driveway, so that's a little bit of a concern from just like a feeling for guests type of situation. The backyard stops more or less around the tree line where the land becomes Army Corps land and you can't do anything to that land, right? So I'll show you the backyard. Overall, this is a quiet street, dead ends with a cul-de-sac. The next door house here is very nice, and the next house as well. And it definitely feels like an area that will improve over time as this stuff gets bought and redeveloped close to the lake. But it's kind of at that transition phase. So again, that house isn't particularly appealing, nor is the one to the right. You could put up a privacy fence and some trees to kind of create some more separation. The other thing I want to highlight outside is the way you access the lake. So it kind of feels like you're cutting through because the water kind of stops here. It's not like directly behind the house. So to get to the lake, you would take this path, and I'll go down there, but it kind of feels like you're walking through your neighbor's backyard here, when in reality, like, these property lines stop more or less like along the tree line here, and I don't have the ability to know as I'm walking this like exactly where it is all the way across, but let's see if we can. Okay, so here we go. We do have a survey marker right here. So it appears that this is the back line. And so technically the ownership of the land stops here, and it's a similar line across. Now, what you typically find on Lake Lanier is that if you were to do something here in this area, you're probably not going to hear about it, right? But you'd want to maybe think twice about what sort of permanent things you do behind the property line. And I don't know 100% where the exact property boundaries run, but this is a pretty a nice marker for us. And it looks as though these kind of, so I'm gonna walk the back. Of course, for purposes of like a short-term rental, there's definitely plenty of space back here. It's not perfectly level, so there is a little bit of slope there, and then it kind of slopes down this way as well. But there's definitely room to create additional deck space or gravel, and then maybe in this not our section of the land, you do something a little less permanent, like a volleyball net or something that can easily be removed, but still marketed, right? So you'd maybe just want to go through a creative exercise of what things could you do in this space that are easy to pull up and remove if need be, and then what things could you do to the permanent space. We've got the back camera here. There's a couple of cameras around the house. Everything's been, according to the agent, permitted and replaced with the exception of the AC in the roof because the AC was some commercial system. Looks like we got a lot of wasps flying around out there, which is not surprising. And then the roof is, I have to look at the disclosures. I can't remember what the year is. Most inspections are going to call out tree branches and stuff that are hanging over the house, so that would be something that would probably come up. But this house is actually pretty clear in that regard. And I'll walk this back porch when I go through the inside. Got the shed here as well. It doesn't look particularly good, but could be either used as owner storage or converted into some sort of like pool table or foosball arcade shed or something. So again, the way we're gonna walk down to the lake, and you'd probably just have to do a little bit of guest education. So again, you can imagine, like, given how far the water is from the house, you're probably not going to have any issue kind of using all that space up by the house. But of course, technically it's not your land right there, right? So here we have a little path, and then there's some other spaces set up down there. So obviously Army Corps owns all the land around the lake, and some situations are a little more clear than others about ownership and access. And this one, compared to other parts of the lake, feels a little more confusing or less clear, or feels a little more shared with the neighbors than other houses on the lake. But obviously that's part of the price you're paying here. So this is a pretty little meadow, but this is not really where, I mean, guests could walk through here and over there, but it seems like you'd probably actually walk this way. And the way you would frame it is you'd probably want to communicate to guests that it is public lake access, that it's kind of in between public and private, right? So technically only you and your immediate neighbors have access to the lake right here. So I don't know that this was actually that different from that other spot, because you could have just walked along the trees, but and that's also kind of nice. You can kind of say, hey, you're free to go access the lake from a bunch of different spots. It's kind of a more natural experience, and you could potentially get a dock permit if you called Army Corps and get permission, but the water's not going to be very deep, right? So you might be able to get a little wooden dock that is private, and that could be a huge potential value add for the property. And then obviously you can have kayaks and canoes here, and people can drop in and access this however they'd like, right? So it's really pretty. So hopefully I'm not underselling it or overselling it. It is beautiful. It's fairly private. Your guests aren't really gonna be dealing with people competing for this space, because in order to access the space, you'd basically have to trespass through your yard or the neighbor's yard, which isn't gonna happen. So you wouldn't expect really to see anyone else here except your neighbors. It does seem like maybe either the neighbors or the current owner has set up some chairs here. And this is probably the best spot to access the water with a kayak or canoe. That's great. So it's a little bit of a walk, but that's typical for Lake Lanier because the way the Army Corps owns the land around the lake. And this is an example of something that it looks like the neighbors have opted to put on the land, a little frisbee golf. So that's kind of cool. I'm gonna try to talk to these neighbors if they're friendly. Okay, so I just talked to the neighbor, Carrie here, super nice guy, which is really nice. That's always a plus. And I just want to document some information. So the property line for him runs basically to this big tree here and across. So they're walking on Corps land. And he explained that he's just been mowing all this, and he's just been doing that because out of selfish interest, he wants it to be mowed. He also shared that, and I was asking him about his experience since this is a current STR. He's been happy with it. He's been very friendly towards the guests. He encourages them to use the frisbee golf stuff that he's set up, and will even share his discs if people ask. He's cool with people using his chairs down there, and he's even created trails in this area that people are welcome to use. So he seems like a really cool neighbor. Obviously that could change, and he could decide he's fed up with mowing this grass, and then you'd maybe be responsible for taking care of it. And if you or him don't take care of it, the Corps is gonna let it grow out, and then the lake access would be tougher. So cool neighbor for now. Obviously that could change, but he seems sharp and friendly. And so as long as you get in touch with him and have his number and partner with him, he seems like a pretty as good of a neighbor as you can have in a situation like this. So I asked him if he's ever tried to get a dock permit, and he said no, because the water's too shallow, and I agree. And you know, like in December when the water isn't as deep, a lot of these folks, his sister owns the house 2 doors down that's listed for like in the 700s, that has a dock. So I might do a little quick exterior drive-by, but even her dock, she has to let it out 100 feet or so when the water gets, the water line pulls back. So he said it seems unlikely that you would even have the depth here, and I tend to agree to do your own dock. So it seems like a nice little cove where you can have some recreational use and a good neighbor situation, and definitely seems like a pretty good setup all things considered. So especially at this price point. And again, he reiterated what I was saying in the last video about basically beyond the property line, you're not going to do anything permanent, but you know, like he's doing with the Frisbee golf, you could certainly do soccer goals or a volleyball net, stuff that's not permanent, and make use of this space. You'd probably not want to invest too much in grading and things of that nature, but you could certainly keep it mowed and have croquet or volleyball or other things of that nature. So certainly a usable, interesting space. And as long as he's mowing that yard, that's a pretty good setup for lake access at this price point. This property could use some landscaping love for sure. I'm gonna hold too much commentary moving forward. We'll come back here in a second. Laundry, skylight windows. This is kind of a tight corner here. The dishwasher looks a little this is like a garage conversion. You've got a wall unit here. So it's a little warm in this room as I'm walking in because that's not on. Good natural light if you open the curtains. You don't see that very often. It's actually quite dirty and buggy in here, which makes me think, and the water doesn't, yeah, there's like spider webs in here, so the water wasn't running in the kitchen, so I'm not sure what that's about. I'm just highlighting some of the details here so you get a feel for the level of finish work. I'm not going to show everything, but you can see kind of like the caulk edges. It seems like a nice remodel, but somewhere in the middle between a really professional, clean remodel and a DIY. It's not quite a DIY by any means, but there are definitely some edges and details that give that sort of feeling, even just like some of the paint left on the beams here, things of that nature. Again, with some like, here's some details on the baseboards, and some bugs. Lots of spider webs and stuff in here that I'm walking through. So it doesn't feel like someone's been in here for a little while. This kind of gives you an unfinished sort of feel. It looks nice, it looks new, but it feels kind of like they didn't paint when they were supposed to. A little bit, but this deck feels new and like the wood is in good shape. So a little bit of paint could probably go a long way here, but it's nice that there's recessed lighting out here. And you do have that lake view that I think you could sell. The more I look at this shed, the more I think that needs to go, but that would be kind of expensive. But you do have this lake view, and especially in the fall, winter, that would be a little more visible. I really like the skylight, good natural light in here. I'll also note just some like older smells. This is really nice, by the way. This is cool. It definitely has kind of smells that reflect the age of the house. Got kind of the original popcorn ceiling here and a little hole in the ceiling there. So again, I think it just highlights like the quality of the remodel here. And then from like a cleanliness standpoint, there's a little bit of neglect to be expected a little bit based on what I understood about the owner being long distance and not really liking the short-term rental management. Lots of good lighting. Some of this lighting feels a little bit too cold and doesn't have a particular style, I would say, but that's just my 2 cents, not a professional designer. Lots to like about it though. Flooring looks good. Lots of nice furniture and details. Looks like a pretty old, lots of spider webs in here. So here's the 3 bedrooms down this hall, right? So you're actually kind of sleeping this like a 4-bedroom. I can't remember if we were calling that out in the analysis, but so this looks like a queen bed, I believe. It's either a full or a queen. Same as this one, full or queen. I think those are both queens. And then this one's a king for sure. I would be inclined, even though those are nice beds, to consider at some point doing kings. That's my, and maybe a bunk room. Do bunk in here to get more sleeping capacity, but here's bathroom number 2. This bathroom feels a little brighter and nicer than the other one. I think the other one was kind of where they kept, I guess this is bathroom number 3, right? So if we weren't analyzing this as a 4-3 before, we should. Because you got the sleeping in the garage and the bathroom over there, so you do have the 3 full baths. Again, I'll just kind of reiterate, like, you definitely have the older house smells in here. And that's just part of the deal when you buy a house that's 30 to 50 years old. It's not unbearable or bad, but lots of recessed lighting. Closet. So you kind of have these 2 different hangout areas, which is cool. Definitely feels like there's a lot of space for the guests, like good usage of the square footage for a rental. So overall, I would say I'm very pleasantly surprised with the walkthrough. And even though the finish quality isn't perfect, it's pretty good. And for a rental, it definitely is up to par. next door neighbor's sister's house for sale. It has a dock. This feels a little more private.